Alright, YouTube, link in the description to RCP's sort of rolling average of the presidential polling. I was correct, and that's that Clinton's lead was short-lived. She's now declined to being 3 or 4 points ahead. What I'm doing, I don't really pay attention to the one-on-one, oh, do you prefer Trump or Clinton polls? Because they're asking the wrong question. You have at least one third-party candidate now polling half the time in the double digits, consistently polling over 8 or 9%. It's wrong to not include Johnson in all of the national polling. It would be unthinkable, considering the fervor with which especially young voters have abandoned Trump and Clinton. It would be wrong to assume that he's going to suffer a significant collapse in support at this point. It's been long-lived enough. It's fervent enough. It's impossible, I think, for Clinton to get them back on board, even though they've been siphoned from the Clinton campaign. They've become the Never Clinton crowd, in essence. I think Jill Stein, you can make a reasoned argument for her support collapsing because it's so small. That represents really, maybe 10% of Bernie Sanders supporters that never got on board with Clinton, probably won't. I think that if third-party supporters end up doing anything other than voting for their respective candidate that they're answering the polls for, it would be staying home. It wouldn't be voting for Trump or Clinton at this point. Clinton, the reason why so many people have abandoned her as far as softer support, the left-leaning independents especially, the reason why that's happened is because of her untrustworthiness and what happened with the DNC. The problem for Clinton is going forward, there are going to be more leaks. You've seen a mountain of leaks and hacks going on in this election. It's going to get worse. It's not going to get better. Snowden, by the way, another correct prediction. He's not dead. He's been tweeting in the last 24 hours, specifically on the topic of the NSA. It was a little bit funny that a few days after he goes absent, after posting this cryptic code, all of a sudden you get new NSA revelations from this shadow brokers group. Oh, I wonder if Snowden knew about this. Of course he did. That's why he was absent in the first place. Now he's back. And he's ranting and raving about the NSA, which is good. It's to his credit. Somebody needs to do it. The NSA is all out of control. Trump, by the way, said another intelligent thing yesterday regarding not really trusting the intelligence agencies. That's the right thing to say. It really bodes well for people like me. I'll vote for Gary Johnson, but a lot of the libertarian-leaning crowd, that's the sort of thing they wanted to hear from Trump from the get-go. These groups are inefficient. They waste a lot of money, don't get results. They're unconstitutional, number two. Now, I don't think Trump cares about the latter as much. He's more of a pragmatist on the issue of domestic surveillance, but certainly the former head of the NSA pointed this out, and I think Trump's probably going to trust him more than the current head of the NSA. Oh, it's like trying to find a needle in a haystack. We keep making this haystack of info that we've got. It takes forever to dig through it, so it's really inefficient. Well, you could slim it down, make it much more narrow, and you wouldn't be violating the Constitution, or at least as much. I know that's sort of a not libertarian thing to say, but it would be far preferable if it were more targeted. Even if you're going to use the unconstitutional FISA courts, right now it's both treasonous and inefficient. If you can take away the inefficiency, you also take away some of the treasonousness. I don't know if that's even a word. But yeah, it would be preferable to what's going on. Clinton's support now is 3 or 4 points ahead of Trump, which is to say within striking distance. Something that until a week ago or so, none of the people on the left, they saw Clinton, she's 10, 15 points ahead of Trump. Those were outliers, and you can see it now that the dust has settled and the polling has gone back to being a little bit less sporadic as far as where the mark hits. You can see her lead is not all that strong. In fact, it's about a little bit less, actually, but about what it was a month ago or thereabouts, before the actual commencement speeches of the RNC and DNC were given, before their closing speeches were made, before that began. Back, in a time period when Clinton was reliably 5 or 6 points ahead. She was ahead by a little bit more than she is now. And this lead doesn't significantly increase if you look at just the polling between Trump and Clinton. but it is a little bit higher, and I'll say why. It's because the third parties are siphoning more support from Clinton. That is, if you don't count the third parties, she gains a few points of leverage. But those third parties do exist now, don't they? They will be in the election now, won't they? It doesn't matter if Johnson doesn't get on the debate stage. He's capable, he's been raising, an order of magnitude more funding than the Libertarian Party raised the last time around. Is it tiny in comparison to what Trump and Clinton have on hand? Of course. Of course it is, and everyone expects that. But keep two things in mind. Gary Johnson has about a third of the support that Trump has right now, or a little bit less than that, despite the fact that he's being outraised, 10 times over by Trump and, 20 times over by Clinton. Not bad. Trump, despite just barely beginning to put out any TV ads at all, and despite being outraised by a good 20 or 30 million per month for several months by Clinton, is managing to cut her lead to the mid-single digits or the low single digits. And he hasn't even really begun to advertise. That is a testament to the durability of his hardened support. I think almost he wanted to wait and see what he could drop to determine what the base of operation was, how well he needed to do at the debates, how much he would need to raise, and how many ads to purchase. I know that he kicked Paul Manafort out, which was necessary because he was implicated with some shady dealings with Russian-backed oligarchs in Ukraine. Although I will say this, Manafort's prediction about rigging in Russia turned out to be true. I'm not sure. People made a big deal about Manafort and what he had said and what he had done. I don't see it as particularly being an issue. I see this as more evidence that, in a way, Trump is taking a conciliatory stance towards the Eastern world, a less warmongering, expansionist, interventionist approach than what you would get under Clinton or have gotten under Obama or W or somebody like that. I would think that'd be a good thing. A Republican like Warhawks, who have been jumping ship to Clinton, I think the reason that they're jumping ship, it's not because they're worried, she's going to crush him and we don't want to lose our Senate seats or whatever, we want to save face. It's not because of that. They don't give a fuck of it. They're going to have the party's support regardless of what happens. It's because she's a warmonger. She does believe in expansionism. She doesn't care whether she threatens World War III or a new nuclear arms race. She doesn't want a conciliatory approach with the rest of the world. She wants to continue nation building because it makes her a lot of money. And it's making a lot of money for the nations that support the Clinton Foundation. Which, by the way, I don't believe them at all when they say, if Clinton wins, we'll stop taking some of these bullshit. They'll just take them from a slush fund. They'll get them under the table. They'll create some new unit that's exempt from that. Sort of hands off, but they still got their fingers dipped in it, and that'll get the foreign money. That's what'll end up happening. It's the way Clintons have always done business. They were getting money from China, from Saudi Arabia, and all these states when Bill was president too. And tens of millions of dollars. They got so much money that's not declared and it's not on paper anywhere, you wouldn't even believe it. No, it's all out there, stashed in various endeavors around the world, and in maybe non-tangible favors owed to the Clintons can be recalled at any time. That's the way they do business. It's common knowledge. So, she's only 3 or 4 points ahead, really, when you consider the most recent, and again, accurate polls. I don't use Rasmussen. Even if the poll is in line with the other polls, I don't take it into account. They have a huge systemic bias in favor of the Republicans. But some of these other Pew Research or whatever, no, they don't. They're fair polling firms. They're showing her 3 or 4 points ahead of Trump, and that's it. Now, a week ago, supposedly it was 15 points, and he's been knocked out, and he might just withdraw. It was never going to happen because those polls were outliers. Those polls didn't mean anything. Now, though, you see the polls do begin to mean, so they've come back into their own as far as reflecting reality, which is that Clinton is ahead by a very mediocre total, and will remain ahead by that mediocre total probably until the debates, at which point Trump is likely to destroy her. He is likely to decimate her. That's what I believe is likely to happen. Could be wrong. But again, I haven't been wrong about much in this campaign so far. I'm going to trust my instincts here and say the public. That is the soft support on either side. We're not talking about the deeply rooted Democratic or Republican partisans. They've already chosen who they're going to support. As far as the more independent voters, which is a significant proportion now of the voting population, it's not a small total like it was, in 2008. Now it's the majority, as far as it's far larger than partisans on either side. Whether or not you even include people that lean to one side or the other, it's a massive proportion of people. It's over 100 million potential voters. We will see who sways them more in the first debate. And my money's on Trump to be the one that does that. And if Gary Johnson's at the debate, again, that would shake everything up because it would be impossible to predict what happens. You could see Johnson suddenly rise to 25-30% overnight, or you could see third-party support. He makes a fool of himself, it collapses, and then it does become a two-way race. I don't think either of those are likely. I don't think he'll end up being in the debates, unfortunately. But at the same time, I expect that Trump is going to completely outmaneuver her. And what Obama's doing with Louisiana, what happened with the State Department smacking his cock on the Iran payment, all of Clinton's scandals, there's so much baggage there that he can target. He doesn't even have to talk about issues. He will. I fully expect that he and Clinton are both going to put more specific proposals forth. Typically, you don't get a lot of specific proposals until you get into the debates. But at the same time, there are going to be so many side swipes and curveballs shot in all directions. It will become evident sort of within the first half of the first debate what's going to happen probably at the other two debates and in the second half of the first one. If Trump does well, that is, if he completely pulverizes Clinton, or at least is outmaneuvering her to some degree, then I predict he'll be the next president of the United States. If he falters, if he does very poorly, if it turns out that he's not very good at debating somebody like Hillary, like obviously he did well against his Republican opponents in the primaries. He's a capable debater. If he, though, stumbles completely, gets completely clobbered in the face, no, he probably won't win. It's going to come down to the debates. Specifically to the third debate. I mean, that's sort of your last chance to truly go up in front of the national stage with a huge audience and really put everything forth. The third debate sort of seals the deal in one direction or the other, but we're going to get an indicator of what's likely to happen at that final debate in the first debate. It's essentially how it's going to work. As far as Mike Pence versus Tim Kaine in the vice presidential debate, who knows? They're both so boring. They're both so generic. They were both clearly chosen so as not to detract from the main candidate's own charismatic persona. Clinton, she's a Clinton. So all the Democrats, oh, well, it's a clinch. It's like Bubba. So they didn't want to put somebody in like Warren or Sanders who would sort of take the shine away by being perhaps better spoken or more energetic or something. Trump, as the bombastic negotiator-in-chief, didn't want to put somebody up there that would have more chops than he had and sort of steal the show. So he puts up Mike Pence, and a lot of people didn't know who that was until a couple of weeks before he made his decision, when he sort of released the list of people that were on it. I still think he should have gone with Lynch, General Lynch, or Newt Gingrich. But again, Mike Pence is better than Chris Christie, I suppose. And Hillary Clinton, I think, made a tactical error by attempting to rig Tim Kaine into the position. It's quite clear, by the way, as the result of him stepping down for Wasserman Schultz to take that position. It's quite clear he was offered the vice presidential position half a decade ago. It's quite obvious a deal was struck at that time that he would be the VP candidate in exchange for stepping down and allowing her to rig the DNC primaries. It's quite clear that that's what happened. Whether or not Hillary's fans are willing to admit it, it's common sense. It did happen. But at the same time, she might have been better off double-crossing him or something like that, honestly, or saying, oh, wouldn't you settle for Secretary of State or something? Get somebody on there that knows how to speak a little bit better than Tim Kaine does, and doesn't come with the, oh yeah, I attacked Obama and Clinton before on this issue and that issue sort of stuff. It looks a little bit like Mike Pence when he came out against some of Trump's proposals, but ultimately the two cancel themselves out. I think that one will probably be a stalemate, because most people aren't even going to tune into the vice presidential debate. It's going to be a bore fest. And neither of these people, by the way, will be in a position to run for the presidency thereafter. Oftentimes what happens is the vice president becomes a main contender the next time around when the president is gone after the second term or whatever. or resigns, the vice president is then sort of the next one to run, using Al Gore or something like that, or Herbert Walker Bush. I don't think that either Tim Kaine or Mike Pence fit that description. I honestly don't. I think both of them are in like their mid to late 50s. They'd be on the older side by then, and they don't have necessarily the personality associated or the name associated with Trump or with Clinton. That's about all. Peace out.